ITV have signed the new Nations Series for 2026 through to 2028, making the undisputed home now of English rugby.
How can you take a bit of bravery and maybe for ITV do a spin-off about some of the players? Will rugby give them access?
If you throw in Rugby World Cup 2027, that hasn't been confirmed yet, is that right?
This is a story I've been chasing for probably about 3 years. If rugby can't grasp this opportunity, how it can widen the appeal of the sport, then it never will.
Alex Payne trying to keep the side going forward. Haskell takes it on now with just relentless chat. And there's Tyndall to add the finishing touch of glamour and World Cup winning stories. A dominant display by the good, the bad and the rugby.
Hello Dream Team, welcome along to this week's episode of The Good, the Bad and the Rugby, proudly sponsored as always by our fantastic partners at Continental Tyres.
Continental Tyres are the official tyre partner of England Rugby, engineered for victory. Their award-winning tyres are built to perform no matter what the conditions.
A very quick get well to our third wheel on our car. Hask is recovering from an op. He tells us that it's a rugby injury rather than cosmetic adjustments this time out.
We are not entirely sure.
We're not entirely sure, but get well to the big man. Saucer of Milk, table for two for us this week. We've got a very special guest who we're going to introduce in just a moment or two, because on this week's show, we are doing a bit of a deep dive into the news that I'm sure you'll have seen last week. It is a big old headline as far as broadcast deals are concerned, because ITV have picked up the rights to the Nations Series, and we think potentially this might be one of the best things to have happened to English rugby since a fairly significant event in 2003. And from a personal point of view, this is a subject I have long found fascinating and at times all-consuming, because 20-odd years at Sky Sports will do that to you. But often for some, sports boardroom battles can be as interesting as the on-pitch action. And when you're looking at broadcasting over the last couple of decades or so, it has been an extraordinary landscape. We've had headlines around ITV Digital's boom and bust. We have had Setanta's attempts to crack the code, ESPN's rise and fall, BT Sport's big money arrival, their recalibration, their rebranding to TNT Sport, and their current challenges in the rights market as we speak. Amazon have entered the game. Apple TV have had a look. Netflix are dipping their toe and apparently are going to do record numbers for the Jake Paul-Anthony Joshua fight later this month. A bit further down the ladder, Premier Sports have grabbed a handful of rugby rights. Sky Sports have remained the biggest beast in sports broadcasting, but currently seem to have very little interest in rugby union, bar the Lions. Anywhere you go right now, rugby seems to be in the agenda and on the back pages, but the television landscape has certainly challenged the rugby fans over the last few years or so. You're all going to have your own subscriptions, you're going to have your own views, and you can have your preferences. But today we're going to get into rugby's broadcasting landscape, the pros and cons of free-to-air against bigger paychecks. And we have, as we said, a gentleman who knows a huge amount about this. Ben Rumsby is joining us. Ben has been the Daily Telegraph's sports investigations reporter since 2018. He has great insight into the ways and workings of TV deals across the sports industry and used to be a rugby correspondent up in Scotland. First things first, Ben, how are you?
I'm very well, and thank you so much for having me on.
It's great to have you on. We're going to get into the, I suppose, the sort of the detail of the rugby landscape. But just before we do that, give us your perception of the sports broadcasting landscape as we sit here right now. I've sort of thrown lots of names and lots of channels and lots of streaming services out there. Is this a period for sports broadcasting which is turbulent? Is it settling? Are rights going up? What is your view of sports rights as we sit here right now?
I think all of the above, really. I think we've never had a period in sports rights broadcasting quite as interesting as the one that we have now. We've long talked about these big streaming services sort of coming onto the scene, but really we're now starting to see that. And the last decade or so has probably seen a plateauing. You know, you look at, say, Premier League football, which is kind of the benchmark everybody assesses themselves by. That's plateaued while these streaming services were kind of considering dipping their toe. But all bets are off now. Going forward, you could see some really, really big money players enter the market and those rights start to go up significantly again, I think.
Do you think it's a good time to be a sports fan and a sports consumer? Are we entering a period whereby the cost of it is beginning to become prohibitive?
Yeah, I did some maths around this after the autumn championship was announced, and we're looking at £1,000 really to subscribe to all the networks that you need to subscribe to watch, an entirety of a sport. Rugby union, as you mentioned, Sky have still got the Lions, TNT have got Prem. You've obviously got ITV getting now all the sort of major internationals, but you need a TV license, remember, to watch a television anyway, and that costs money. And then you've got Premier Sports on the market as well. So it's not cheap for the consumer. And what people I speak to in the industry have warned against is further fragmentation. So in a way, it's good that some of these rights are starting to coalesce under the umbrella of an ITV, for example.
You've touched on a couple there. I'm actually going to go through the full detail. Take a very big deep breath and hold on tight if you are a fan of watching rugby on telly. So the Six Nations is on the BBC and ITV until 2029. Nations Championship is now on ITV until 2028. 2027 Rugby World Cup, the 2027 Rugby Championship, the 2027 Lions Tour, women obviously to New Zealand, the 2029 Lions Tour men, South Africa against New Zealand Test Series next summer is all still to be determined. If you like your club rugby, the Gallagher Prem is on TNT until 2030-31. The European Champions Cup is on Premier Sports until 2026-27. The United Rugby Championship is on Premier until 2029. Super Rugby Pacifica is up for grabs. Top 14 is on Premier Sports. And if you like to go really niche, World Sevens is streamed online. Champ Rugby is on something called Clubber. Pro D2 is on YouTube. Rugby Pass TV also picks up bits and bobs. I'm sure there are others out there as well. We should also mention PWR, which is on TNT. That is quite a challenge. I mean, you can spend most of your Saturday afternoon trying to find the thing that you're trying to watch. So I suppose that is the challenge for rugby at the moment. Have you got a sport which you think has absolutely nailed its broadcast strategy at this point in time?
No.
No.
Well, unless you specifically boil it down to Premier League football, really, that they're the ones that everybody kind of aspires to be like. But even football, you could reel off dozens or more channels. If you want to watch all the football that there is out there, you will have the equivalent number of channels, if not more, than all the rugby channels that are available. I guess what people really want is the rugby that they want to watch. They want to have that in as few places as it's possible to have, really.
Yeah. And the reason that we're talking about this is the ITV deal that has been done, I think, is a bit of a game changer. So ITV have signed the new Nation Series for 2026 through to 2028, making the undisputed home now of English rugby. So we're talking predominantly English rugby at this point in time. As incumbent, TNT was given first refusal to make the bid, but they declined, which has enabled ITV to swoop in. TNT apparently walked away without making a bid, having broadcast the autumn internationals for the past 2 years. That gives ITV, therefore, the right to show every game in the new 12-team competition, which features all Six Nations teams and their major Southern Hemisphere rivals, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Argentina, Fiji and Japan. The new tournament begins on July the 4th at Ellis Park with the number one side in the world hosting England. I suppose the question, Ben, that comes round to this is the significance of a free-to-air broadcaster snapping up such a significant opportunity for rugby union. Where do you think free-to-air sits at the moment in terms of importance for a game like rugby union at this point in time?
So I think if we were sitting here a year ago having this same conversation, we would almost certainly be talking about TNT Sports potentially being the home of pretty much all rugby that people want to watch. Because at that stage, they had invested in the Autumn Nation series. Everyone thought that they would make a significant bid for the Six Nations, and that ITV and BBC would have been almost nowhere, really. It's absolutely fascinating that the complete opposite has happened. And from what I'm told, that is simply down to the fact that TNT found that something like the Autumn Nation series, played over a reasonably short window, just didn't drive enough subscriptions to make them valuable enough to bid similar amounts to what ITV were prepared to pay. So you've sort of flipped the entire kind of rationale, if you like, on its head in the space of a year. And I think this may well end up being the future of international sports. You've got football also on the free-to-air channels, rugby now on free-to-air. Be fascinating to see whether other sports follow this same model, or whether other broadcasters decide that the value now is in the club game for them, the hardcore fans who will pay to watch their teams play on a week-to-week basis, rather than the sort of dipping in and out of the international windows.
What's really interesting about, and we talk about narratives, we're talking about narratives here, Ben, obviously, is the fact that ITV have now got the England games in the Six Nations. They have got a huge chunk of that tournament now. You've now got summer rugby, as we've been mentioning, with what were the summer tours, but is now the first tranche of the Nation Series. And then you've got this enormous November that's going to culminate in this sort of grand final weekend. From that perspective, when you are out and about and you're digging and you're talking, where do you see the balance now between huge numbers of eyeballs and huge checks? I suppose a sort of comparative deal many years ago would have been the England and Wales cricket boards selling the rights to Sky, which put down an enormous amount of money, which the ECB said we're now going to reinvest into the game and get kids and bring it through that way. But they also turned off, in inverted commas, the huge number of eyeballs off the back of that epic 2005 Ashes series. When you're out and about and you're sort of talking to the various big hitters in this space, where is that balance now between eyeballs growing the game and checks growing the game?
I still think it's in the checks department. Right. And had TNT made an offer, obviously more than ITV were prepared to pay, let's say another 10 million or 20 million or something, then I have no doubt that those rights would have ended up on TNT. The eyeballs really only comes into the equation when the bids are quite close and they think, well, actually, eyeballs, advertising revenue, the importance of growing the game, those are factors that are worth sacrificing a few million quid for, but not tens of millions of pounds. I think it's far more interesting that the pay TV broadcasters are now looking for more what they call value for money. So I did some maths on how much ITV are paying for both the Six Nations and the Nations Championship, and it works out at about £1 million a game, whereas TNT for Prem Rugby pay less than half that for Prem Rugby matches, and obviously they get a lot more content as well for that. And when you combine that with this theory that your hardcore rugby fans, club fans, will pay for subscriptions, but perhaps the wider England fan base may not. They may pay for a month or for 6 weeks to watch a major tournament, but then they will dial back. Then all those things come into play to make it actually a really positive sort of state of affairs for free to air now.
Sorry, just to clarify that, are TNT paying Prem Rugby £500,000 per game?
I would say probably about 400,000 per game. It's 200 million over 5 years for 93 matches a season. It works out at about 400 grand a game.
And what do you think the average viewing figure is for a Prem game?
Oh, it'd be in the low hundreds of thousands, I'm guessing. That is a guess, though.
So I mean, and I would back that up from my days at Sky. An average Premiership game 15 years ago was getting between 250 and 400,000, depending. I mean, Cipriani and Wilkinson, I've always said, are the two players that moved the dial significantly upwards. When they played, the viewing figures spiked. But I'm sure Prem Rugby will be able to clarify, and if we haven't got those numbers quite right, they will. But so TNT are paying £400,000 for a game that's ranking around about 250, 300, something like that, thousand. And yet ITV are paying £1 million a game. If you look at the England-France game in this year's Six Nations, I think it was 6 million or so. So it would feel, therefore, that the international game is offering better value for money. And the opportunity for ITV to sell sponsorship and advertising around that, presumably, is going to make that £1 million feel quite cheap, isn't it?
Certainly in terms of advertising, but then when you factor in the subscription costs, TNT subscription these days is £31 a month. So you multiply that by the number of people who are paying to watch that, then I'm guessing that TNT think that makes good business sense for them versus the people who would tune in for the £1 million a game, show, but then unsubscribe once that finishes rather than maintain their subscription for a whole year.
Yeah. When you're out and about and talking in the market, what is the appeal of international rugby? Why have ITV come in quite as heavily and built this calendar that they have?
In terms of annual viewing figures now for any ITV programme, Six Nations Rugby is right up there with the most watched things. Obviously, when you get to a football World Cup or a football Euros, but these aren't annual events, then you will get more people watching. But really, 6 million, it's between 6 and 10 million people watching Six Nations. You think of all the advertising revenue that ITV can generate from that, versus, dramas, all the other programs that it shows. This now is the really big revenue driver for the likes of ITV.
10 million on a Six Nations Saturday. You just don't get that. I mean, I'm a Celeb would only just get that. Yeah, I think the biggest one that in our biggest audience in our year was like 12 million, and I'm a Celeb. So you just, everyone raves about how big that is, but it just puts the sort of Six Nations in its how big a deal it is to have it. I think it's great that it's free to air. I think it's great for the sport.
So tell us, Ben, why this is such a good deal for rugby. 90 million, is that right? And that's just for UK rights.
90 million for the UK rights, that's right. So it's 42 matches. So if you remember, Six Nations is only 15 matches a year. So you've got 42 matches, obviously over it's a year, but it's over a 2-year period, if that makes sense. So just a lot more international rugby on free-to-air TV. One of TNT's calculations here, I think, is that free-to-air can be used almost as an advertisement for the sport to drive people to subscribe to their service. So there will be people who will watch international rugby and think, I want more of that. Where can I get more of this? Well, you can get more of it if you watch Prem Rugby on TNT Sports. So they're not now having to pay the 1 million a game that ITV are paying to drive people to their Prem content. They're letting ITV foot that bill, hoping that does drive people to their content. And also ITV, potentially are winners as well. It's I don't want to sort of sound too sort of, rosy skies, but it does sound a bit like there could be a virtuous circle for the sport.
And not just to TNT to watch on a Saturday, but potentially into the grounds to pick a club, support a club, cheer for their favourite players type thing. What about the opportunity for the players? So we've been talking for a while, and there definitely have been signs of progress, but just about enabling the characters within the game to flourish more openly. What do you think this constant free-to-air narrative now it is from February all the way through to November, how big an opportunity is that for England rugby, and what steps should they be taking to make sure that Manny Feo-Waboso and George Ford and Sam Underhill become recognisable faces for what they're doing as much on the pitch as Joe Marler's managed to do for his career via the Traitors?
I think they need to look at a different way of them allowing their players to advertise themselves. If you're going to have this many international games, which will go up to what's going to be 12 to 15 internationals now a year, which is a lot. So you've got to allow them to show their own personality, and which unfortunately also means them being open to them having their own sponsorship and not then curtailing them from actually promoting that when they're with England or however they want to do, which is currently, there's still very strict guidelines around how they do that. And I think it's just got a bit silly, and they really need to take a look at Alona Mar and what she's managed to achieve by not having that. The other side of this is also the time they have to actually do any promotions to make themselves up. We're playing so many games now. A season for an international player is, it's 50 weeks long. You might get 2 weeks off. So it doesn't give you that idea. I always say this. Just imagine if Joe Marler was still playing for England and he'd gone off and done Traitors. How good would that be for the state of international rugby and for Harlequins itself?
Yeah.
Suddenly people go, oh my God, this guy's great. I'm going to go check out what he does for a living. Now they can't. Well, now they can. They can come and see the podcast that we make for Joe Marler. Joe Marler will see you now, available at all subscriptions. But,
Good plug.
this is the opportunity that rugby misses. And I mean, it's not even rocket science. Just go copy Alona Mar. She went on Dancing with the Stars. She then was on the red. Someone gave her an opportunity on the red carpet. She introduced Reese Witherspoon. Reese Witherspoon has now funded her podcast and everything else. It's like, it's not like the blueprint's not out there for you to follow. And I think that's what's got to change. Is my worry is yes, it's great. We'll have free to air. ITV will get their end of it. They'll probably showcase it in the same way as they always do. But is that going to actually grow any of the people playing the game's profile? Probably not. It's going to be, how can you take a bit of bravery and maybe for ITV do a spin-off about some of the players, and will rugby give them access to go behind the doors, behind the closed curtain, and actually, present rugby in in the way that it should be seen.
I wonder if the Netflix, I was going to say, situation with full contact, the lessons will be learnt from that, and that
I
the
just
Nations Series
don't.
will open its
I just
open
don't
its
know.
doors.
I think the game is still too close. They can say what you can say. I've got it with tinted glasses on from, the side that I'm now looking on. But it is. This game creates great human beings, and we never tell those stories because the team is more
don't tell them
important.
enough, do we?
But there you go.
Now, Michael, tell me, what is it you're most looking forward to about the festive season?
Well, I was very fortunate to go to a little Christmas carol service
a
on
little one.
Friday, so I feel the merriment has already entered my body.
Good.
So I'm looking forward to more singing. I probably upset a few people with how loud I was singing, but it's really got me in that
No one's
festive
ever
spirit.
faulted your effort, though. That is the main thing. I'm feeling very excited about the Christmas season because I've got the perfect gift already sorted for my nearest and my dearest. You get a guess.
Ooh, tell me more. Tell me more.
Well, your first clue is it's smooth, aromatic, and comes from a particular region in France.
I have been watching a bit of French rugby this year.
Yeah.
Jalibert is definitely all of those things.
It's a great shout. But the second clue is it's been aged for a minimum of 4 years and uses grapes entirely from the two most exclusive areas of Cognac.
You did not need to see that. I knew where you were going with this. You must be talking about the perfect Christmas gift, the one, the only Remy Martin VSOP.
Ding, a point to you, my friend, because Christmas hosting and gifting this year with a touch of luxury is complete thanks to Remy Martin VSOP.
So from the good, the bad, and the rugby, and Remy Martin
And Mathieu Jalibert.
and Mathieu Jalibert and Remy Martin VSOP, we hope you enjoy your Christmas festivities in the most excellent way.
As always, please enjoy responsibly. Ben, what's interesting, and this is where sort of comparing what rugby union is doing right now relative to us. So football obviously is very embedded, certainly the Premier League with Sky, with TNT. I know other players are coming to the market. Cricket has got its deal sewn up with Sky for the next number of years. TNT's Ashes coverage is getting a pretty tough time in the media and certainly from fans online. So we'll see what comes of that next time around. Formula One obviously has made its home on Sky as well. What do you read into the fact that rugby union, with all the challenges it has had over the last 5, 6, 7 years, has made this move at this point in time? Is this solely a rugby union thing, or can you see other sports coming back to the numbers of eyeballs that free to air is able to offer?
I think the only other sport outside of football and rugby is cricket. But interestingly, cricket has tried this with the hundreds, with a certain number of international matches. I think the BBC had a sniff around and showed a few and then kind of pulled out of that. I suppose the difficulty with cricket is it just played over such a longer period of time, whereas the great thing about football and rugby is, although obviously football and rugby matches are getting longer and longer these days, they do lend themselves to, that kind of 2-hour sort of sit down and watch window. And, we keep hearing attention spans are getting shorter and all that. So, and they are really the big two beasts, aren't they? I'm not sure another sport would be able to, command that kind of viewership that those two could.
Do you have any data, Ben, on, and forgive me if it's a sort of a slightly niche question, but on what the potential commercial value of free-to-air rugby on ITV, for example? So I'm not quite sure what Guinness pay to sponsor the Six Nations, but I imagine it is a pretty penny. Do you have any idea on what the commercial uplift of free-to-air international rugby would do relative to, say, what the Gallagher Prem is, what Gallagher are paying to sponsor the Prem?
Yeah, I would have thought with the amount of eyeballs that you're going to get for ITV, there would be significant premium on that. What the exact numbers are, I don't know. I'm not sure they've ever been reported, but it stands to reason that, as we were saying earlier, you've got low hundreds of thousands of people watching Prem on TNT versus 6, 8, 10 million people watching Six Nations and now potentially Autumn Nations series on ITV. It's going to be a multiplier, isn't it? You would think.
So, and I suppose if you throw in Rugby World Cup 2027, I'm amazed that hasn't been confirmed yet. Is that right?
Yeah, very, very strange, because this is a story I've been chasing for probably about 3 years.
Right.
And normally these deals are done, 6, 7 years in advance. And I find it absolutely fascinating that we're now in 2025 with less than 2 years to go, and there's been no announcement anyway. Whether a deal has been done behind the scenes and we're just not being told about it, I don't know. I do think the fact that it's in Australia probably makes the selling of it in European markets slightly more difficult. I remember getting up at 7 a.m, getting a bacon sandwich and sitting down to watch Mike and his teammates winning the World Cup in Australia. But I imagine from ITV's point of view, they're not going to get as many people watching, a pool match in Australia at 7, 8, 9 in the morning as they would if it was 8 o'clock at night, for example. So there may be some haggling to do over what the value of that is. Also, I had heard some rumours that the BBC, or World Rugby at least, would be very interested in getting the BBC on board. We saw that
Really?
they obviously had the Women's World Cup recently, and BBC and ITV share the rights historically for football's major championships. So the idea that you could engage the BBC with all its, web-based sort of added value and social media, etc., how ITV would feel about that, particularly given now, they are sort of becoming this home of international rugby. Maybe now it does stay with ITV, but certainly people I was speaking to in World Rugby could see the value of having it split between the BBC and ITV.
Am I right in thinking as well that in the past they have sold Rugby World Cup rights as a pair? So when you do Japan and then you get France, but now you're selling Australia and potentially the US as well, which I imagine from a sort of terrestrial broadcaster is not an ideal timing on either end of the day.
Yeah, we've just had the Football World Cup draw in America.
That was something.
Scotland are playing a match at 2 o'clock in the morning, UK time.
Right.
So imagine the Rugby World Cup in 31. You're going to get kickoff times like that. So again, if you're ITV, you'll be saying, well, how can we sell advertising space for this tournament, for these matches at the same value as at prime time? So again, you will be trying to negotiate, if you're sensible, the fee downwards. And then obviously 35 is the next one, which I'm guessing is almost certainly going to have to be in either Europe or South Africa, in an amenable time zone. So that may be when the rights, start going back up again.
Okay. Just something you just said there with regards to World Rugby being very interested in working with the B. What is the difference? Because I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think Six Nations games on the Beeb sometimes go above 10 million. And some of them, I think the England-France absolute jamboree, I think it might have been 8 years ago, I think it was 55-35 or something like that. I think that was peaking at around about 13 million. Have you got any understanding of why the Beeb potentially rates so much higher than ITV? Is that just literally where it is when you click 101 as opposed to 103? Is it the advertising? Is there any further detail as to why the Beeb would outrate ITV?
Bluntly, yes. When you switch your television on, what channel does your television tend to switch on to?
That's it.
So if it's on the BBC, then, maybe you don't switch channels, right? So I think that is definitely a factor. I think habit is also a factor, and the BBC have built a reputation over decades for being, the home of sport, before obviously the pay TV broadcasters came on the scene. So there is that kind of habit of just watching something on the BBC. But in terms of quality, I actually think ITV's international sports broadcasting now is a very, very, very good product. And as you say, particularly now they've got the England matches, that's the real driver of audiences, compared to watching the number of people who watch a Wales or Scotland Six Nations match. It's night and day compared to what we'll watch an England Test match.
Okay, before we move on to sort of where club rugby sits right now, sum up for us how significant a deal you think this is, given all the challenges the game has faced, particularly post-COVID. The fact that ITV have now got this narrative through the year, it's a multi-year deal. The World Cup is up for grabs, and I'm sure they'll be right in that. How significant is this for English rugby right here, right now?
Yeah, I think it's significant for English rugby, but more significant for the kind of the armchair fan that finally we've got all of particularly England's test matches in a year on free to air. And as Mike's saying, if rugby can't grasp this opportunity to kind of start thinking about how it can widen the appeal of the sport, then it never will. really. I think when you've got so many potential eyeballs on your sport for such a significant period of time, I think it would be almost criminal not to capitalise on that going forward.
Right, Michael, we're going to give a shout out to our friends at Castor, which is the premium sportswear brand behind England's very slick looking kit this season.
And there it is.
There it is.
The home. It looks very, very familiar. I'm just going to
Flavours
say
of?
that little flavour with the little red sash under the armpit down to the waist. Strikes a very familiar vintage, classy vintage.
A familiar
Some
old
might
friend.
say 03, but I'm not going to say it. I'll let you judge for yourself.
Worth noting as well, if you watched the Rugby World Cup draw earlier this week, you'll have seen the new Wallaby kit that's been produced by Castor as well. That is looking very slick.
Very, very retro. This is like sweet spot for you, Alex. I'm thinking Far Jones in here, Liner,
Campo. Great man. Great man of a great dynasty.
It looks amazing. I think the fans will love it.
I do agree with you on that front. It's worth noting as well, Castor kits aren't just made to look good. The tech behind them is seriously impressive as well. They have double the abrasion testing, I'm told, 10,000 to 20,000 revs, making the shirt absolutely ready for anything, and rugby union in particular. If you were giving out shirts to a player to properly road test, who would you put top of that list?
Oh, I think if you were doing it now, and we'll stick with England players, seems that we've got the England jersey. As soon as you said abrasive and abrasion testing, Sam Underhill all day long.
Shout.
He puts his body everywhere, and it's never in a. I wouldn't say he's a smooth player. He's abrasive.
He's concrete, isn't he?
Yes.
I'd possibly throw Ellis Genge in there as well. So all action up front.
And might wear it when he's UFC fighting.
And might wear it when he gets into the octagon as well. Worth noting, England have been unstoppable in the Autumn Nations since switching to Castor. Coincidence? Methinks not. A retro-inspired kit and a serious run of form to boot. Make sure you check out Castor's Christmas offer. 30% off everything at castor.com until Christmas Eve. Get shopping. So on to club rugby then. And we mentioned TNT has not been able to renew their Champions League deal. They have walked away from Test rugby. Their Ashes coverage has had a bit of a going over. Where is TNT as a business at the moment? I read something a few months ago about restructuring and repackaging it all up. What is happening inside the corridors of power at TNT?
Well, they've just been bought by Netflix, so I think that's completely changed everything when it comes to TNT. A week ago,
I completely missed that. So that's confirmed.
I didn't realise that was done.
We were speculating on what is going on there, but that is confirmed now, is it?
Obviously, it has to go through regulatory approval.
Right.
A lot of concerns in the US that owning Warner Brothers, which is the kind of, the parent company, owns Discovery, who ultimately owns TNT, that it would be too much of a monopoly for TNT to have all of that content. So it could be that the regulators in the US sort of veto the deal, but I doubt it, particularly with Donald Trump in charge.
Yeah.
That really does throw everything up in the air. I mean, even if a Paramount, for example, had bought TNT, I think you'd be talking about a completely different equation than with a Netflix. So what will be interesting is what Netflix think of what TNT has done recently. Could TNT have clung on somehow to the Champions League or said, we'll give the Autumn Nation series another go, and knowing that Netflix was sniffing up, I don't know, maybe you can't operate your business that way, but it will be absolutely fascinating going forward what Netflix does. Will it maintain TNT as a paid for separate sports only channel? Will it decide to take its content and start streaming it, on its own platforms? I think we're in for a very, very interesting time at TNT.
What would your bet be?
I think it's too early to start harvesting content from a sports subscription channel and start putting it on a kind of general entertainment platform. It's sort of a worldwide platform. I think that may come, but I think we're some years away from that. So I think they will continue to operate TNT in the short term, but they'll want to see, return on investment for sure.
One of the other things, obviously, pros and cons and inadvertent sort of consequences by not renewing the Champions League, and I think it was about a £1 billion deal, that wasn't it? That obviously gives them a lot of firepower to go after other properties. I think it may even have been your.
They could do a Canal Plus.
Yes.
and go, right.
Do you want to explain that? Because that,
Well,
that
yeah.
was
So,
talking to Simon Gillan.
Canal Plus did the French Football League. Spent I think it was 650 million euros on that, and then obviously after the Premier League got their 1.2 billion, their last one, their last deal, the French league came back and said we want €1 billion. Canal Plus said no, saved itself all that money, and then has put 175 million euros, I think, into rugby, and it now shows rugby from Thursday night till Sunday, so games
very
every
little
single
effect
day.
to their viewership.
And they lost, I think they lost something like 5,000 subscribers or something.
Yeah.
It was so small.
But the bottom line had a 400 million pound
but
boost.
the bottom line is they hung on to 450 million or whatever. So, is this the time where you could do that with another sport? You look at what Sky have done with Sky, having a dedicated F1 channel, having a dedicated NFL channel now. They flick onto a tennis dedicated channel when the tennis is on. I think golf, obviously. So there are possibilities that they can do, and when you've got the money of Netflix behind you, I've just seen the deal, 82.7 billion they've paid.
Wow.
But it's going to be interesting to see the way that they go about it.
Do you think, therefore, that the money that they've saved on Champions League gives TNT firepower to go after, hypothetically, the Champions Cup? Or do you think this new deal means that whatever they've saved will be going up to the parent company and those decisions are taken out of their hands a bit?
Before this deal was done, I was convinced that the Champions Cup would be heading back to TNT. I think they see club rugby as a big subscription sort of success for them. With Netflix, you just don't know. I was convinced as well that Premier League football, they would, go all in some respects with the Premier League football auction in a couple of years' time. But again, it's just so hard to know what Netflix's sort of philosophy is going to be. I still think the Champions Cup will end up on TNT in a couple of years.
Just on that, do you think with Netflix and their history of success on sporting docs, do they, when they negotiate their next deals, can they build that into their deals in the fact of how much access they want around those teams? Because that ultimately is the biggest problem with rugby, is people just say no. Haas says it all the time. Rugby generally, when asked a question, says no. But if that money's coming in and can they force them to say yes, and you just got to get on with it, and it takes out the hands of I'm going to say the Blazers. Apologies for other people. The hierarchy in rugby that always say no. If they go, well, if you want this money, you have to say yes.
It depends on how much Netflix are prepared to pay hardball, really. If it's a take it or leave it, we want this access or we're not going to buy your rights, then yeah. Or we want this access or we're going to give you 20 million quid a year less if you don't give it to us, then yeah, maybe. It all comes down to money at the end of the day, how much they're prepared to pay and whether they're prepared to walk away if they don't get what they want.
Can I just ask you a quick question? We're talking obviously Prem Rugby. We've been comparing it to Top 14. I've got a chart in front of me that charts the annual revenue paid by broadcasters to those respective leagues. So in 2013-2014, the Top 14 was 32 million euros a year, and Prem Rugby was 45 million euros a year. Fast forward to 2029-30, which is the deals that are now locked in, the Prem has gone from 45 to 47 million. It did drop to 43 for a couple of years, 2024, 25, and this year. And it goes back up to 47 next year. So it's gone up by 2 million over 20 odd years. Top 14 has gone from 32 million in 2013-14 to 129 million euros in 2029-30. So they have 4x'd their value in that time. When you look at the Prem deal with TNT, is that a success? I mean, on numbers, no.
Even if you just do inflation, it's not a success.
No.
But
how would you judge Prem Rugby on TNT?
I think we've probably got to put this in the context of what's happened in the last few years on the back of COVID and the clubs that have gone, sadly, to the wall. Particularly a club as massive as Wasps, really. So they've lost content, haven't they? Ultimately, they've lost however many matches it is a season through Wasps and Worcester and London
Irish,
I
yeah.
think. Yeah.
So there's a thing. Could a broadcaster be powerful enough on a sport that if you want this big check, because obviously there are people who want Wasp back. Obviously, talk about that. Ken, opportunity in Kent. Obviously, we know that London Irish are trying to bring them back, but they're having battles with the RFU about which league that they come back into, and obviously they want them to come back in at the Prem level. If someone if the broadcaster
Worcester
goes,
back in the champ.
yeah, they're back in the champ, and they'll hopefully do really well and get promoted. Well, if they're allowed to be promoted, they're not. It would be far better if you could bring those three clubs straight back into the Prem. That surely makes it a stronger Prem if you're going to ring fence it anyway. But can a broadcaster be as bold to say, well, that needs to happen?
They could. No, they could. Again, it's down to how much money they'd be prepared to offer and whether they'd be prepared to walk away from a deal in order to achieve that. Look at Super League Rugby League. Closed competition, licenses, granted to clubs to play in it. If they don't fulfill the license requirements, they're out. Or if another club fulfills the license requirements, they're in. If they want a big name in there, they bring them in. And they want a small name out, they can boot them out. Everything is possible. I think in Union, you'll probably face a lot more resistance from lower down the pyramid for that, particularly for those clubs who have striven for years to try and get into the Prem and have been repeatedly denied. Stadium's not big enough or your infrastructure doesn't quite stack up. I think rugby, it's so strong at grassroots. There's so many powerful voices there that I'm not sure, it'd be a difficult one.
That's what I always think is the interesting play on a broadcasting model, is to somehow figure out how you do the championship and make two the champ. What, they shorten that as well?
Yeah.
Is that a rebrand as well? Amazing.
The ships are out. Sadly, they've sunk.
Ships are so old school now.
Yeah.
So if you look at what France has done, the unique thing about that is 28 teams sit around a table and decide about the best thing for club rugby in France. They've also got a third semi-pro third league, whereas we literally are now just ring fencing, closing up shop of the top level. But the champ is there to be. We talk about pathways and player pathways, and young academy kids get their contracts cut at the end of the year. Where do they go?
Yeah.
Well, you're just basically saying that if you don't play in the Prem, you basically don't really have a career, because it's semi-pro in the champ. Yes, there are some pro clubs or whatever, but it only takes a broadcaster to sort of lean into there and a bit more money there. Yes, you're not going to get paid well, but you could manage those payments in there so the clubs are breaking even. They'll be doing better than the Prem clubs if they did do that.
Yeah.
But I think that's another avenue that isn't explored enough.
Just a question on where you think Prem Rugby is sitting right now. I mean, absolutely, the product on the pitch is incredible. Crowd attendances are on the up. The league itself is vibrant and bustling. If you are sitting in Prem Rugby's corner offices, are you comfortable with the fact you've got another 3 years on your deal, and therefore let's keep going, and we'll cross that bridge when we have to? Are you slightly nervous about what's happening with this Netflix deal over the short to medium term? Is the product strong enough that if TNT eventually has decisions taken away from them, there will be other buyers in the market? I ask that because I know that Sky just aren't hugely interested in club rugby at the moment. If TNT says, I'm really sorry, for reasons out of our control, Netflix have said no more live sport, we're off to do something else, where do you think Prem Rugby would go?
Well, that would be a catastrophe for, to have the rug pulled out.
So from the digging that you've done, TNT at this point in time the only broadcaster really interested in club rugby in this country? Or do you know others that are chomping at the bit and knocking on the door?
I don't know of any others. I think that you're right about Sky. They seem to have decided that for them, I mean, it's an ecosystem, isn't it? When you're spending multi-billions on Premier League football, as Sky do, just to cling on to the lion's share of that, then your calculations for other sports changes dramatically. Whereas if you're a TNT not spending quite as much, then you do have more money sloshing around to kind of prop that up. In the absence of a credible third subscription, like a DAZN or Premier Sports, becoming really, really credible, then if Netflix decide we're going to switch the lights off, then that's not good news at all. I think they'll honour the contract. That'd be crazy to suddenly say, with 3 years to go, we're just going to, sort of pull out of this.
Yeah.
So in a way, if you're the Premiership, you're probably relieved that you've got that amount of time to hopefully, if you have to go in and see the Netflix execs and convince them, and I don't know, maybe use the fact that ITV have got the Six Nations and Autumn Nations and is going to drive, interest in this sport and try and sell to Netflix and try and recreate, the documentary that they did, but do it better. I think you'll be having those thoughts, but I think you'll be pleased that you've got some time.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
If you were going to do one subscription for rugby, you get a Prem Sport, wouldn't you? It's got the European Cup, it's got the URC, it's got the top 14. Now, I don't know what the URC deal is. I read, when I was trying to find out earlier, I read it's between 60 and 70 million euros, but it said that 50% of that came from South Africa, which I assume is SuperSport or something. Yeah. But if they got the Prem as well, that would almost be the home of club rugby, wouldn't it not?
Well, potentially, although
I'm
I'm
not
not
saying
quite
it's
sure
a great
what the viewing
product, but
numbers
I'm
are.
not sure.
Ben, how do you assess Premier Sport in the rugby landscape? I mean, the Champions Cup has been on for a couple of seasons now. I don't think they publish viewing figures, but there are rumours around some pretty low numbers, certainly for season openers and things like that.
Yeah, and this is why I think the Champions Cup will end up back on TNT, all things being equal. I don't want to say it's a non-entity because that would be unfair. Obviously, there's clearly has clout to buy these rights, and it's got the URC as well, as you say. But ultimately, if they want to drive, real meaningful subscriptions and viewers, then TNT would be a better home for the Champions Cup. I would argue than Premier Sports.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any way of assessing what Champions Cup on Premier Sport has done to the competition? I mean, obviously, anecdotally you can, but have you seen a reduction in the value of the overall proposition? Is it holding up as the Champions Cup execs wanted it to? What is the sort of the assessment of the move from Sky to then TNT onto Premier?
There's a caveat in that with the change of format. Yes. Has not helped whatsoever.
No. But do you have a view on that, Ben?
Yeah, I agree. The tinkering with the format of the Champions Cup has just been absolutely terrible for the competition in terms of raising its profile, people being able to find it, follow it. And I think they really need to just kind of settle on something. And I don't want to say it's invisible because it's not. That wouldn't be fair. But certainly the sort of awareness of it and the visibility of it, and the, how we kind of think of it. It's not what it would be if it was on another bigger broadcaster. I think that's fair to say.
That is 100%. I mean, I completely forgot that it was on this weekend, which, if I go back through the history, it was the thing I look forward to most of all about our season. Yeah. And this is where but this is more a bigger problem for the sport, is we've got no continuity with anything about how our season is delivered. Yeah. It's, what do we have? We had a break for 5 weeks, Prem Cup for 4 weeks or 5 weeks.
Something like that.
And then 1 week of random Prem, and then you're into the European Cup, and then it's just,
It does feel that, and we'll come back to sort of concluding this in just a moment. It does feel like if the Champions Cup ends back on TNT, and TNT for English fans or fans of English clubs have Prem Cup, Champions Cup, that is a very good thing for English fans, with international rugby available on ITV. And if we can get to that point, I think that is very, very exciting. Where do you think this leaves CVC in all of this? So CVC acquired a 14.3% stake in Six Nations Rugby. They've got a 27% stake in Prem Rugby. What do you think the current landscape does for investment coming into the game at this point in time? And where do you think CVC sit on what they have been doing in rugby?
I mean, If I was CVC, having come in when I did, I would probably have expected more of a return on investment than I've had, and perhaps even to have exited from that investment with a substantial profit. I don't think it's been, terrible for them, and I think there's still the opportunity for them to do that if the right sort of moves are made by the sport. But I think we all thought when they came in, this is going to be the kind of golden ticket that will turbocharge, the sport going forward. And I'm sure they thought that as well. And it's been much slower progress than I think we all thought it would be. And I don't see them going anywhere until they're sure that they're going to make their money back and more.
If you were CVC, where is there, or from a TV rights deal, where is the biggest change that rugby needs to make? Is it, because I don't think any of us argue with the product on the field, whether that be Prem, whether it be international rugby. Is it just being more aligned in what we're trying to do? Whereas I feel that everyone in rugby is fighting for their own corner rather than what is the bigger picture. Is it something as simple as actually getting everyone and reorganising a little bit to make everything follow on a little bit easier, going to bring in bigger TV deals and make it easier for them to sell?
I love you say the word simple, because rugby's been trying to do
That's
this
not
for
its
about
thing.
30 months. Since turning professional, there are just so many vested interests. You've got the different unions, in the Northern and Southern Hemisphere. They clash over various things. You've got the club game as well. No one is prepared to do anything that they think would leave them in a worse off position. And this isn't just rugby, by the way. This happens in all sports and other walks of life as well. You end up with kind of paralysis through, no one's prepared to jump on behind a revolutionary new idea and say, well, yeah, we'll all sort of align. And
well, there are people
maybe
trying to create revolutionary new ideas.
It's not going very well, though, is it?
It's been resisted. Let's be honest.
No one likes change.
Well, this is you'll be experiencing this yourself. Exactly, is what you are up against is any sort of change, any sort of meaningful change anyway, is so difficult because turkeys don't vote for Christmas, basically, and sadly that's where we're at.
Would you believe it? As we are recording this on Monday afternoon, I have literally just been sent by producer Tom breaking news. I miss the days of breaking news, actually, but this is from the BBC News website. Paramount launches rival bid for Warner Brothers Discovery, Ben. So it looks like the Netflix deal is not a done deal. And Natalie Sherman, the business reporter, has written, Paramount Skydance has made another offer to buy Warner Brothers Discovery as it seeks to trump a rival plan from Netflix to buy the company's studio and streaming networks. Paramount, which is backed by the billionaire Ellison family, said it was making a direct offer to shareholders of $30 a share to scoop up the whole of the Warner Brothers network, including traditional television outlets. It said its proposal was a superior alternative to Netflix, delivering more cash up front to shareholders and a greater prospect of approval by regulators. Interesting, it goes on to say President Donald Trump has said there could be a problem with Netflix purchase, pointed to competition concerns given the size of the companies. You've obviously touched on that already. Who knows what the outcome of this will be? I think it's fairly clear that it's not a done deal or certain at this point in time. So without sort of speculating too much, Ben, I suppose the question I want to ask you is where everything we've discussed at this point in time leaves the English rugby fan. If it ends up with ITV having the majority of the Six Nations and the Nations series, and it ends up with TNT coming through whatever the deal is that's going to get done to own Prem Cup and Champions Cup, do you think this is, as we've said at the top of this show, the best thing for English rugby since 2003? And what sort of impact do you think those two moves might have?
I think it can be. It's an opportunity for it to be, but the sport needs to grasp this opportunity. Use the shop window that ITV have to help grow the game more widely. If you get a Champions Cup back on TNT, you get, as you say, the whole of English club rugby in one place. Sport is about stories. People want to be told stories. They want to be told stories that they understand and they can follow, and they're not sort of having to kind of scratch around and find. So if rugby can tell a compelling story that captures people's imaginations, then it will thrive from this. The cynic in me worries that it won't take this opportunity, but I don't think there's any doubt that it's there if it wants to do it.
Why do you think they won't take this opportunity?
Because of all the vested interests I've already spoken about, sort of clashing and, not necessarily all aligning and singing from the same song sheet.
Thank you so much for
Thanks,
diving on.
Ben.
It's been a really interesting bounce around. I think it is a very, very interesting time, not just in rugby, but in the sporting landscape as far as broadcast deals are concerned. It feels like a huge opportunity, as you said, with the usual caveat that potentially one or two pitfalls along the way. But thank you so much for diving on. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll look forward to catch up down the line. Thank you, Ben.
Cheers,
Thank
Ben.
you so much.
So thank you very
Cheers.
much indeed to Ben Rumsby. More to come, I'm sure. But hopefully the landscape as far as the watching rugby public is concerned will be simplifying, and that can only be a good thing. Talking of the simple, it is very nice to be able to dial in a very good friend of the show who is about to do something absolutely bonkers for an incredibly good cause. The former England Sevens captain and World Player of the Year, Ollie Phillips, is part of a team that is about to row 3,000 miles across the Atlantic as part of the world's toughest row.
Yeah, indeed. This Thursday, he and his team, Seas Life, set off from the Canary Islands aiming for Antigua. And they're doing it to raise funds for the My Name's Dottie's Foundation, Cure Parkinson, and the Matt Hampson Foundation.
Very impressive indeed. First things first, you got the beard ready, so you're well prepped for it. Ollie, very nice of you to dial in. What are you doing?
I actually think it's a bit of a myth. He's actually not. So he doesn't want anyone to know that he is actually Santa.
Right.
So he's pretending he's going away for Christmas, but
Christmas is
really
cancelled.
he's just going to see Rudolph, and then they're going to fly around the world. Is that true?
How is prep?
My prep is good. Hello, you delightful humans. Prep is grand. It's been a bit nerve-wracking because today they actually brought forward the race start. So it was originally Friday, and they've now scheduled it for Thursday. And the reason they've done that is there is a enormous storm forecast for Saturday, Sunday. So they want us to have a couple of days basically on the water before it hits. I know that is going to be very scary. Very scary.
Right.
Oh, nice. Could it move you back? Well, is it going in your favour or backwards? Are you going to row for 2 days and then end up where you started?
Well,
that's the hope. That's the hope. Yeah. So it should make it fast, but we will be surfing some big waves.
Tell us about the why and how you've ended up in yet another predicament where you are taking on planet Earth in all its glory.
Well, as certainly Tins, but obviously the GBR are no. Those three causes that you mentioned at the beginning are very, very relevant and pertinent, particularly obviously with the most recent diagnosis to everyone's good friend, Lewis Moody. So doing it for Cure Parkinson's, My Name's Dottie, and the Matt Hampson Foundation, obviously closely affiliated to rugby. So they're the causes. And the reason from my perspective is I just love these challenges. I love having something to aim at, I'll be honest, this is going to be the biggest one. I think this will be the biggest and the hardest one that I've done. My wife is not particularly over the moon about this, and obviously leaving our three kids over Christmas, missing my middle daughter's birthday is going down like the proverbial bag of sick. But
is it hammered the Dad of the Year award?
I was in the front running, and now I've lost it. Tins. It's gone. It's long gone. It's consigned to the scrap heap. But we're doing the fundraiser has been superb, and we are crossing our fingers that between those sort of causes we might be able to get across the 1 million mark. So that would be a phenomenal achievement if we can get there. And 40 days at sea, some sunburned faces, and some torn hands from rowing excessively. That's probably worth it, really.
So £1 million is the aim to raise. You mentioned around about 40 days at sea, 50 knot winds to set sail to. Give us some of the other numbers. What is the sort of rowing on, rowing off type calibration amongst the crew? How many calories a day are you going to be consuming? How many minutes sleep are you allowed? What are the other numbers?
The exciting part is obviously I'm at 5 foot tall and weighing 103 kilos for this race. I'm someone that loves eating.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm weighing 103.4 at the moment. And that was intentional. So they estimate that you'll lose between 12 and 20 kilos doing the race. You need to consume on average about 6,000 calories a day. The shift pattern is 2 hours on, 2 hours off continually. So we're a quad. So 2 of us will be on the oars rowing 2 hours, then we'll swap over. The other 2 come on. So the biggest challenge is obviously from a physical perspective, but it's the mental and the sleep deprivation that are the big kickers. Just because you never get more than an hour and a half maximum of rest or sleep. So that's going to be the real stumbler. And then it's okay, how well do you keep harmony on the boat, and how well do you sort of stay close and stay friends at the end of it all?
And having done numerous 7 series, you're used to tight knit groups on the other side of the world. I mean, this is a whole nother level. But what are the tips and tricks and techniques? I think everyone who listens to this show will need, given Christmas is coming out on the corner. What are the tips and tricks for keeping harmony over the next 40 days or so?
I mean, look, Payno, without getting too deep on it, it's about just trying to appreciate every single moment. Just be grateful when you get up. So even when you are absolutely knackered, which I'm sure will happen, just showing that level of sort of gratitude of like, I'm fortunate enough to be here. I'm fortunate enough to be in this position. They anticipate in the first 3 to 7 days, most people will come down with seasickness. So like, just how do you every single time you come up for those 2 hours, make sure you put your best foot forward, you stay positive. You are someone that is a positive influence on the boat, rather than the sappers, as we used to call them in the changing room. One of those people that just sees the downside in everything, because that will be a pretty big mood hoover if you do that.
I obviously know you very, very well and have lived with you. I know that the positivity isn't going to be the problem. Having lived with you, I almost killed you after 7 days. So I'm just going to put a little bet that you're first over the side of the boat. And also, you need to consider eat 6,000 calories. I'm worried that you'll start nicking other people's food. My food bill when Ollie lived at me, I think it went up at least 5 times.
Wow.
He is very much the squirrel.
Food hoover, not mover.
Yeah, he is a food hoarder.
Tins, you are joking. There's
So do your partners know? Do your boatmates know this? Have they planned?
They have witnessed. They have witnessed the consumption levels that Phillips can operate at are excessive, which is why I think my wife is very hopeful that I am one of the people that loses 20 kilos rather than 12 kilos. But in all seriousness, there's that is a very real, like, food makes or breaks a boat, and I am acutely aware of my delight in consuming a lot of grub. So I want to make sure that I am considerate of everyone around me. And Tins, you were saying about getting thrown overboard. Well, every sort of 4 or 5 days, you have to basically go in the water. You tether on, you jump in the water to clean the underneath of the boat. Because the biggest risks that you get on these crossings, obviously one is big waves and you get rolled or you're capsized. But the second one, and nobody probably would forecast this, is marlin attacks, marlin strike. And if you don't clean the hull of the boat, obviously you get a little plankton build up underneath the boat. Plankton attracts small fish attract tuna. Tuna attract marlin, and marlin go straight for the tuna. They hit the underneath your boat and they puncture the hull. So last year, one boat had 7 marlin attacks where they came through the hull. You can imagine, like, you're underneath, like, trying to get an hour's kip. Bang, a marlin beak comes through the hull. I mean, you don't want that happening. So every 4 or 5 days, we've got to jump in either side, 2 people, scrub underneath the boat. That is going to be surreal in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. That is going to definitely get my...
Benefit of the marlin coming through is you get to cook it and eat it.
Yeah.
So, every sort of cloud.
Sushi.
Get it on board, chop it up, bit
Lovely
of sushi.
chocolate.
A little bit of sushi.
Well, you could lick the bottom of the boat for a bit of extra plankton.
That's my
extra
extra carbs, my extra intake.
What have you packed that you simply can't do without?
That's a great shout. Well, I mean, we are limited on weight. So we want to be as light as we possibly can be. So most people will be disgusted at this, but for 40 days, we are going with 2 pairs of shorts, 2 t-shirts, and 2 pairs of socks. That's all we're going across the ocean with. So we're going light. What we can't go without, well, apparently at the moment, is we're getting quite a lot of people asking for content. So we can't go without our GoPro and our Osmo and something else. So at the moment, there's a bit of a social. I'm sure people aren't going to want to witness us all being seasick after day 3, but that's sort of the plan anyway.
Is there anything, like when you're on a bike for a long period? Is there any taint management, some tushy
100%.
management? How do you manage the tush?
You need to inspect each other's
from sores.
You need to inspect each other's arses or tushes every 2 days a day. Yeah.
Bend over and give me 2 good coughs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tins, it's true as well, right? Because you're permanently wet, obviously, just from the water coming over. And so your skin management is absolutely critical. And if you don't get on it early, your skin starts to corrode, or you can get massive blisters. And if you get massive blisters and boils, you're in massive trouble. So, and the salt water can really play a problem. So whilst that that isn't, you really have to be careful on that, because you're sat on your backside 2 hours on, 2 hours off. If you start getting chafage, blisters, you're in a whole world of pain.
Just with all this talk
trench cheeks.
I was going to say, just with all this talk of skin rot and boils, a reminder you are listening to The Good, the Bad, and the Rugby, your weekly rugby show for all big things in the game. Great pleasure to have Ollie Phillips on.
Always lowering the tone for you,
taking us where only he
Always
can.
lowering the tone.
Always lowering the tone. Have you got a boil in the bag turkey for Christmas
Hopefully
Day?
there's no boils in any bag anywhere. No, we've actually, Payno, one thing we have got is, so all the food that we eat is freeze-dry food. So it's all rehydrated. So we have a water maker on board the boat. It takes the water in from the Atlantic Ocean, it desalinates it, and then spits out the water. And we boil that and put it into a boil in the bag, like army rations. And so for Christmas Day, we have reindeer stew. That is the freeze-dried ration pack that we have for Christmas Day. Sounds wild.
Ho, ho, ho.
What a treat.
Well. We'll send some to GBR as a little treat for you all when we get back.
Please don't. Just a quick one. How can people? I mean, it's an epic odyssey, and it's full kudos to you once again for getting involved. How can people donate? What do you need from people at this point in time? The people that listen to this.
Well, I mean, there's the conventional ways of just giving pages and everything else like that. But if people want to follow, if people want to get involved, our website is Seas Life, and Seas is SEAS. So seaslife.co.uk. And if people want to follow, there's an application called the Yellow Brick YBR. If you download that and follow the Atlantic Row, you'll see us. You'll see us in there. But I'll be honest with you, the more people that can just get behind us, cheer us on. We've got Starlink on board the boat. First time ever the fleet has got Wi-Fi, basically. Thanks to Mr. Musk, we have full connectivity. So we'll get everyone's messages. We'll get everyone's well wishes as we try and keep ourselves going for 40 days over the festive period.
Ollie, good luck, old boy. Well done.
Fellas.
Very,
Lots
very
of love.
impressive.
See you
See you on the
soon.
other side.
See you, mate.
Just a reminder, it's an incredible challenge for 3 incredible causes. My name's Dottie, Cure Parkinson's, and Matt Hampson. We are fully behind the 4 of them as they set off. We know the rugby community will be as well. And confirmation, if you want to support Ollie and Team Seas Life, visit www.seaslife.co.uk/donate. And you can track their journey via the link on their socials as well, at Team Seas Life on Instagram. Every bit genuinely helps the charities they're championing. Good luck to Ollie and stay safe out there. We've got a brand new podcast out that's been launched by the Good Bad Media stable with our good friend, the editor-in-chief of the Rate magazine, Tom Chamberlain, and it is called The Luxury Dispatch.
It is. Joined by an extraordinary lineup of guests, Tom delves into the refined and the rare. Each episode explores a different subject, uncovering the craftsmanship, heritage, and subtle details that define the world of luxury.
They do indeed. And the topics include cocktails, Armani, cigars, and Rolex, with guests such as actor Rafe Spall, director Paul Feig, a highly knowledgeable set of journalists and historians, and even a couple of rugby legends enlisted to help sort out a Christmas present for yours truly, naming no names.
Check out The Luxury Dispatch with Tom Chamberlain. The first episode is out now and available on YouTube and all major podcast platforms.
Meanwhile, our new book, which is Deep Reach Onto the Table, hold it up to the viewer. It says, The Good, the Bad and the Rugby Reloaded is out now. I'm actually very much looking forward to reading this for Christmas. Whether you are looking for the perfect Christmas gift or something to pop on the fire because the log supply has run low, grab yourself a copy, available via Amazon. I think there's a very good discount available as well. Perfect for the stocking fillers. Get yourself a copy now of The Good, the Bad and the Rugby Reloaded. Thank you to Continental Tyres, as always, who are sponsors of the Continental Tyres Schools Cup, driving the next generation from the ground up. We value your support on each and every show. We're a folding pocket production. Stats and facts provided by Russ Petty. This episode was produced by Tom Edwards. We'll see you again next week. From all of us, bye for now. Bye.
You've been listening to The Good, Yay, The Bad, and The Rugby, Oof, with Alex Payne, James Haskell and Mike Tyndall. Thanks for listening.